Welcome to everyone who's in the room. My name is Celeste Fry. I am the CEO of an urban planning firm called Public Works Partners. We are working with Transpo Group and the excuse me, and the town and county to help facilitate tonight's process. So on behalf of Rockland County and the town of Clarkstown, I want to really thank everyone for being here tonight. It is a beautiful June evening, so we're glad you chose to spend a little bit of it with us. We are very grateful for those of you who are here in person and also everyone who has joined us on Zoom. So tonight is the third convening in a series of conversations that began almost 2 years ago to reimagine routes 303 and 304, those corridors, in order to meet today's needs and make sure that there is safety and sustainability. Your input is welcome and essential. For those of you who are joining virtually, if anyone is having any issues with the Zoom, please send a message to our colleague in the chat who's managing the Zoom. She'll be able to help you out. And also, if you go to the project website, you will be able to submit comments on the project during or after the meeting. Okay. Little delay, but okay, thank you. All right, here is our agenda for the evening. So we just completed the open house in the foyer outside. For those of you who are with us in person, thank you so much for your input and your comments. It was a great conversation. And for the presentation portion of our evening, we are going to have introductory remarks. First, on behalf of the town of Clarkstown, from Al Maroney, who's the chief of staff to the town supervisor. And then we will also have remarks from the Rockland County chief of staff to the county executive, John Lyon. So thank you both so much. And then after that, Scott Levine from Transpo Group, the transportation planning consultant on this project, will be presenting the study findings to all of you and talking through them. And then we will have some additional question and answer and discussion after the presentation is concluded back in the foyer. And I think that is everything. If you didn't have a chance to look at the boards before you came in, you'll have a chance to do that afterwards. And with that, Al, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Celeste. And ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to be here on behalf of Supervisor Homan. Unfortunately, he had not one or two, but three conflicts tonight, so he's very sorry that he couldn't be here. I happen to be lucky enough to be his chief of staff and the deputy town supervisor. And I will tell you that one of the things he said to me this afternoon was hit me hard, which was, Al, there have been too many deaths on Route 303 and 304. I have had to, this is him speaking now, I have had to meet with members of the families of people who have died on Route 303 and 304. And it's just a long time coming to try to get this project off the ground. I must say that it was his insight and his desire, along with the strong support of former Assemblyman Ken Zabrowski, to make this happen. So on behalf of the town of Clarkstown and on behalf of the town supervisor, we are grateful that all of you are here tonight, and we are hopeful that we can move forward, make this happen as soon as possible. There are going to be some people who agree, some people who disagree with whether we need a roundabout, whether we need a light here or a left turn there. We're here to listen to everybody's suggestions. So that's all I'm going to say. I know that we have other speakers. We have Mr. John Lyons from the county, and I'm going to turn it over to him now.
Good evening, everyone. like it's been said, my name is John Lyon. I'm the Chief of Staff to the County Executive. He only had two competing events tonight, so the supervisor beats him out on that front. But I want to first thank the Town of Clarkstown staff, County Rockland staff, our consulting team who has helped so much with this study. As you'll see, as you saw on the boards, as you'll see on the slides in the presentation tonight, a lot of work has gone into this. A lot of concepts have been considered, and we're really appreciative of your feedback. You taking the time to come here and listen to us lay out these potentials to you, because we want this to be done in the best way possible. Getting this study completed, getting these recommendations on paper so we can take them to New York State and get New York State to fund these improvements, which are critical to our life, to our safety, to our community. So thank you again for being here. It's appreciated. The county executive appreciates it, as do I. Thanks.
Thank you both so much for being here tonight and for your support of this project. And with that, I'll turn it over to Scott, who will give the presentation.
Thank you so much to John, to Alan, to Celeste. So we've got a lot of content to get through. We're going to move at a sort of a relatively quick pace. The presentation is being recorded, so on the website, you'll be able to go back. Everything we're covering today, it'll be a recorded presentation you can access through the project website. And also the slide deck that I'm going to be presenting in a few moments is also going to be on the project website. So you'll have an opportunity afterwards to access everything that we're going to cover. Again, I'm Scott Levine. I'm with the firm Transwo Group, who's working with the county and the town to make this study happen. Where we're going to go tonight, first, I'm going to remind everyone what is the purpose, why did we undertake the study, a little bit briefly on background. Next, the importance of the input that we're asking for from all of you. The input that we're asking for is one of multiple considerations that will go into ultimately the decision-making process, but it's one of the more important ones, one of the most important ones. I'll talk about some of the sort of tools in our toolkit that we'll be applying or proposing to apply in various places along routes 303 and 304, a little bit of glossary terminology. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go up and down the two corridors. First, we're going to start with Route 303. Then we're going to move along to Route 304, and we're going to go south to north. And what we're going to do is we're just going to go site by site, talk about what we found, what we're recommending, and at 5 specific locations, one of which is on Route 303 and 4 of which are on Route 304. We're going to go into a bit more detail. We have some detailed drawings. We have some impact analysis there. And I'm going to hand back to Celeste, who's going to close us out for the evening and talk about next steps afterwards. So again, the background of the study and why we're undertaking the studies primarily focused on safety. I think it's fair to say safety is the guiding light. You heard from the town supervisor's chief of staff of all of us working on this study. There's been a total of 18 fatalities, 18 deaths on these two roads just in the 10-year period that we've been looking at, 2014 to 2023. So safety first. Sustainability involves traffic congestion. It involves emissions. It involves pedestrian and bicycling access. So there's lots of aspects of sustainability. So it's safety and sustainability, which together are motivating our work. The formal study has been underway since the middle of 2024, but the planning for the study, every preliminary piece of work has been ongoing for years before that. So really it's taken us some time to get to where we are today, and I'll talk in a few moments about where we go from here. Goals of the study. So this is a planning study. I want to make sure that everyone understands what this type of study is. It's a planning study. Our goals here were to identify issues or deficiencies, develop concepts, develop ideas to address those deficiencies, both for today and we looked out to the year 2050 with land use and traffic projections, evaluate how the different ideas that we've developed would perform. So what follows from this is multiple steps after this study ends. So when we complete the planning study, there is still a multi-year process moving forward that ultimately is going to get to the construction of the improvements that are needed on the two corridors. As you may have seen from the poster boards in the foyer, at every place where we're making a recommendation, there are more than one viable option. We're going to talk in several locations. this is what a roundabout would look like. This is how it would operate. This is how it would perform in terms of traffic flow and safety, but also this is how improvements to the existing traffic lights would work. So everywhere we're talking about one or the other, we're going to be comparing both of them. So a consensus needs to be reached as to which options to take forward. Next, we have funding. So funding, there's various sources. There's state sources, there's federal sources. We have colleagues here tonight who can speak about that. But it's a competitive environment. So the improvement projects that will come out of this study will be competing against other improvement projects elsewhere. And it will be important to advocate and to demonstrate the value of the proposed projects. Then you're off into what's called the design phase. So this is when you survey, look at utilities, get out there and ultimately prepare construction plans. Then we have an environmental review process. There's both federal laws and a New York State law on environmental review. So there's two processes that both have to be completed. And finally, you're off to construction. So I want to make sure everyone understands that we are at the completion of the planning study, and where we are going is these next steps to follow. On background, so we've been looking, as I said, both at what are the problems and issues out there today, and you see the term no build up there. No build refers to what happens if it's business as usual all the way out to the year 2050? What if we do nothing? What are the conditions on the roads going to look like? And then we start to look at how do we address those issues? How do we improve them? So as I said a few moments ago, 18 fatalities over the 10 years of crash data that we've been studying, a total of 4,600 crashes that we've taken into account. We've looked at safety. We've looked at what traffic engineers refer to as level of service. I'll talk more about this in a few moments. We looked at a total of 36 intersections. We looked at access across and along these roadways for cyclists and for pedestrians. And we did a pretty detailed analysis of what is the current land use context and what are the growth projections out to year 2050 to make our traffic projections. Okay, next I want to talk about the input that we're asking for from everyone, both those of you in the room with us tonight and those of you online. And in fact, we would love to have feedback from anyone who's not with us tonight who can provide us feedback afterwards, which would likely be through the website. So as you heard from Celeste a few moments ago, this is the third and final workshop of the study. We are presenting proposed improvement concepts, and what we really want to know is, what do you like of what we have to say? What do you not like of what we have to say? What do you like best? What do you like least? What could be improved? Maybe a tweak here, a tweak there, because we don't know these roads as well as you do living and working here. So that's the sort of feedback we're keen on. And if you think we've got it totally wrong, tell us in the most polite way you can think of. Tell us that as well. Tell us that very directly. Okay, how you can provide feedback to us. You have the QR code up on the screen, which you can scan with your phone. It'll take you directly to the website that you see there, routes 303 and 304 study.mysocialpinpoint.com. And if you scroll down, you'll see a box to leave comments. The one thing we would ask is that as you leave comments, please tell us if your comment is across the board generic for the entire study area, both corridors, or if it's related to a specific location. Tell us that. Say, I have a comment about Germans and 304, or I have a comment about 303 and Valley Cottage. Tell us where your comment refers to so that we have that information as we're going through them. Those of you in the room, you have your hard copy forms, hand them back to any of us at the end of tonight's agenda. And afterwards, we're going to be back in the foyer, happy to continue the discussion after. I wanted to briefly touch on some other work that you'll be seeing on routes 303 and 304. I know that going on right now, there's a bridge project on Route 304 over the thruway, and I know that's disruptive. It's got traffic down from what's usually a 5-lane section down to 3 lanes, 1 lane in each direction. So that's going on now. You all know about that because you experience it. 3 others that I want to highlight tonight. Number 1 is at Route 304 and West Nyack Road. New York State DOT has a project in the pipeline to design and then in 2028 begin construction of a replacement to the existing traffic light or the traffic signal on Route 304 at West Nyack Road. This location was the only location of all the intersections that we studied that had multiple fatalities, 3 fatalities at this intersection. So the state is aware, the state has this plan moving down the pike to replace and reconstruct the traffic signal. What that would involve is to be determined, but I wanted you all to be aware of that. And then towards the bottom, there's 2 resurfacing projects that are going to resurface nearly all of routes 303 and 304 throughout Clarkstown. 303, the entirety of Clarkstown, and 304 from West Nyack Road, which is where the freeway section coming up from New Jersey ends. So from West Nyack Road, all the way north, all the way up to Route 9W. Those will involve milling, resurfacing. There'll be asphalt surfaces at the end of that project. There'll be repairs to the concrete and drainage in some places. And what you'll see in some locations are what are known as audible roadway delineators, or what you may have thought of as rumble strips, either on the side of the roadway or in the center of the roadway. So that's also on your radar screen coming down the pike. Okay, a bit of the sort of general tools that we're recommending for various locations along this study. I'm going to start on the left-hand side, then I'm going to move to the middle and to the right-hand side. On the left-hand side, dotted markings for turning movements. These are the little dots you see highlighted in that red circle there. The little dots you see that are pavement markings to guide you when you're turning, when you're making a left turn typically through an intersection. And the point there is exactly that. Guide the turning driver through the intersection so that they avoid sideswipe crashes with drivers in adjacent lanes. So that's number 1 that we feel is applicable at many locations. Number 2, in the middle, what's known as a leading pedestrian interval. This one is showing up at more and more locations across New York State and nationally. And what this means is, if you look at the top panel here, there's a red light for traffic for the vehicles, but there's already a walk sign for the pedestrian. So the pedestrian who presses the button to say, I want to cross, gets a lead time of maybe it's 5 seconds, give or take. And what that allows the pedestrian to do is step into the crosswalk, assert themselves into the crosswalk, and put themselves directly in the field of vision of a driver who's turning right or turning left. And it's a big safety improvement for that pedestrian. Over on the right-hand side, protected only left turns. We're going to talk about several specific locations where we're recommending protected only left turns. There's 2 reasons you might consider this. One is safety, and the second is just the amount of traffic turning left versus the amount of traffic it has to cross. And what protected only left turns mean is that you can only turn left when you get a green arrow. When you get a green ball, like you see in this arrow here, there is a red arrow, and the red arrow means you cannot turn left. So if you think of Route 304 and 3rd Street, or Route 304 and Congress Road, those are 2 locations where you already have protected lefts. They make a big improvement in terms of safety for some of the most dangerous types of crashes at intersections. Okay, 3 more that I'd like to cover, beginning on the left-hand side. So the intersections in the study area that have traffic lights have what you see on the bottom, which is known as span wires. So you have 2 support poles and then wire that's strung between them, and that supports the traffic lights that you see as a driver. So the proposal is to replace those span wires with what are called mast arms that you see over just above. And those mast arms have various advantages. One big one that I want to highlight is that in terms of safety, it puts the traffic signals in a better position relative to the driver's field of vision. So there are safety benefits to putting traffic signals on these mast arms rather than span wire. They also look nicer, etc. But there are real safety benefits. In the middle, it's kind of a mouthful, retro-reflective backplates. And what this refers to is it's a 3-inch border that goes around the black traffic signal that you see up there. And it's reflective, it's yellow, it's bright. It makes the traffic signal really stand out against whatever's going on in the sky behind it. So it improves driver visibility. Again, a noticeable safety improvement. Finally, over on the right-hand side, you're seeing these more and more intersections across New York State. Flashing yellow arrows at places where left turns are permitted. So permitted left turns means you're seeing a green ball indicator and you as a driver can turn left across opposing traffic if it's safe. So you as a driver have to make a judgment whether it's safe, and these flashing yellow arrows tell the driver it's your decision. You make the judgment call when to turn left. And that also has a measurable increase in safety. So for each one of these measures that I've just talked about, I won't go through each of these numbers over here, but the point that I want to make here is that for each one of these types of treatments, there's a measurable, these are based on national research, there's a measurable improvement in safety, some of them on very specific types of crashes, some of them sort of across the board on all types of crashes. Okay, a term you're going to hear again and again tonight is level of service. You'll even see the acronym LOS, which stands for level of service. This is how traffic engineers think about how congested a roadway, how congested an intersection is. And so just like if you're in school, you get a report card, an intersection gets a report card. And an A is the best and an F is the worst, but a little bit different than your school report cards. A D is actually pretty good. So A, B, C, D is acceptable. And E and F means we have a problem. If possible, we'd like to address that problem. So anything A, B, C, even a D is sort of what we're shooting for, but an E or F is what we're attempting to avoid, mitigate, make better. Okay, next thing I'd like to talk about in our toolkit, and this one applies to Route 304. I'll talk in a moment about the stretch of Route 304. It would be a new center median through a stretch of Route 304 where currently there is not one. So what you're in the top image, which is from Route 304, we're looking north along Route 304. This is in the section between Bardonia in the south and South Main Street to the north. And in this stretch, with the exception of several major intersections, the left turns must be made from the same lane as through traffic, which is moving rather quickly. So what a center median would do, there's pros and there's cons. I'm going to talk about the pros and the cons of everything tonight, but I wanted to highlight there's pros and cons of the median first. What a median would do, it prevents left turns both into and out of properties that line, in this case, Route 304, and also any minor streets where there's not a turn lane or something to break that median. So what this means is that if you would wish to turn left, either into or out of a property or a minor street, you're going to need to find a U-turn facility. So the best practice is to provide U-turn facilities at something like a 1/4 mile to a 1/2 mile spacing. These could be roundabouts. So we're going to talk about roundabouts as one option tonight at several locations along Route 304. Could be at signalized intersections if there's enough width for vehicles to make that U-turn movement. Or it could be at dedicated U-turn facilities, and I have a drawing to show you of what these dedicated facilities might look like. There's actually an example of what I'm going to show you later near Erie Street in the town of Orangetown, where there's been an improvement project to add in a center median, like you see on the bottom here. Sometimes they are simply bricked or hardscape, as we say, concrete perhaps. Sometimes they're vegetated. It depends on the width. It all depends on the context. So center median is something I wanted to highlight. We'll come back to that when we talk about 304 shortly. And then roundabouts. So I mentioned that a bit earlier that we've been looking at roundabouts at a series of locations along both corridors. Every place we've looked at a roundabout, we've also looked at an option which is not a roundabout. Okay, so in no case are all our eggs in one basket with a roundabout option. But what I'd ask you all to do is understand this would be a change. There'd be a pretty substantial change to how traffic moves in these locations. There's pros and there's cons, there's advantages and disadvantages, and just have an open mind. Listen to what we have to say about this. We're happy to talk further about it, but just keep an open mind because roundabouts do have a number of advantages. And there is the latest statistic that I'm aware of, approximately 250 roundabouts across New York State that are under the jurisdiction of just New York State DOT. There's more under local jurisdiction, but there's about 250 and growing. Okay, so we have sort of 10 key aspects. If you're unfamiliar with how roundabouts work or how they perform, first that I want to highlight. So again, I said safety is sort of the guiding light of this entire study. Roundabouts are generally safer. They eliminate high-speed angle crashes like those left turn crashes that are really, really dangerous. It's one of the worst types of crashes. So with roundabouts, you end up with sideswipe crashes, maybe some rear-end crashes, fewer of them, but way fewer of those angle crashes, which is really, really dangerous and where lives are lost. Number two, you don't have a traffic light, you don't have a traffic signal. When there's a hurricane and power's out, the roundabout still works, even if the traffic lights in town are not. They have a different footprint. So we have the drawings that we've put together for everywhere that we're talking about a roundabout. In most locations that we've looked at for these corridors, it's more space needed for the roundabout than for the signal alternative. So that's something to be considered, more space right at the place where the two roads cross. They do generally have a traffic calming effect because all traffic approaching the roundabout slows down. You don't go through the roundabout at 30 miles an hour. You go through the roundabout maybe at 10 or 15 miles an hour, even if there's no opposing traffic. And if there is, you wait at the yield points to enter into the roundabout. And at all locations, so we've looked in detail at 5 locations, as I mentioned. At every location that we've looked, we get better traffic flow performance from a roundabout than from the best signal improvement option to compare it against. Okay, continuing with our top 10 list here. Number 6, it would be a pretty substantial change to the character of the roadways. If you're interested in where else to find roundabouts in New York State, Route 67 in, I believe it's Saratoga County, it's just north of Albany. There's a series of roundabouts, one after another, right where Route 67 intersects with Interstate 87. In Poughkeepsie on Route 55, near Poughkeepsie on Route 55 in Dutchess County, there are 3 roundabouts within approximately a half-mile spacing. So they're a change in the character of the roadway, but you are seeing them for the reasons that we're talking about tonight. Drivers need to understand, need to learn how to navigate roundabouts, particularly if there's multiple lanes, multiple circulating lanes inside the roundabouts. And at the locations we've looked at here, the traffic volumes are high enough that you would need more than one lane. These would not be simple one-lane roundabouts. You'll see that in many cases, there's 2 lanes for at least part of the roundabout, the traffic circle. They can be established as gateway treatments, so they can be established to communicate to travelers. Now you've come into a place which is different than the place you have just left. Maybe you're entering into the hamlet of New City, or you're entering into Valley Cottage, etc. You see on the right-hand side of the slide, a warning sign saying, do not drive beside trucks in the roundabout. So you've got to accommodate trucks. These are state highways. There's a need to get the very largest of trucks along these roadways. However, if you design them so the trucks would stay in their lane throughout their time traversing the roundabout, these would be gigantic. So there's a balance between the size of the roundabout and getting larger vehicles through the roundabout. And the way this balance is generally struck is by having semi-tractor trailers straddle where there's 2 lanes inside of a roundabout. And therefore, the signs tell drivers, do not drive next to large trucks for that reason. Finally, at the bottom here, everywhere that we've looked at roundabouts, we found that the roundabout option has a delta in terms of cost. It's a little bit more expensive, some cases substantially more expensive than the traffic signal alternative. So you get with roundabouts, but you also give with roundabouts. There's pros and there's cons. Just to remind everyone, once again, everywhere we're going to show you a roundabout, we're also going to show you a non-roundabout option. Okay, what you've got here is a rendering. This does not exist yet. This is a rendering from a similar study, which was completed last year in Tarrytown and neighboring communities in Westchester County of US Route 9. And this is a proposed roundabout. It's a complicated roundabout, as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 legs. So it's a complicated intersection. But just to communicate to everyone that the roundabouts that we're talking about here as possible future options we're not different from what is being proposed elsewhere in the region and across New York State. We have traffic simulations everywhere that we're proposing roundabouts to give you an idea of what it would look like to drive through these roundabouts. So each one of these little colored dots that you see over here, that's a vehicle, and I'm going to click and you're going to see traffic flowing. This is one of the drawings. So we're going to go through various options. This is one of the drawings, one of the possibilities on Route 303 in Valley Cottage. So I'll explain in more detail when we get there, but there's this simulation of this location and for all of the other 5 locations on the website. So in the interest of time, we're not going to go through all 5 of them in the presentation, but I am going to direct you to the website. Have a look. All the videos are available up there. Okay, so with the preliminaries out of the way, I'm going to transition now. We're going to start on Route 303 at the south end near Route 59, and we're going to move south to north on Route 303, beginning from there. To help us and help you think about the full length of Route 303. We're going to do the same thing for 304. We've broken up these corridors into different segments that just help us think about the differences, the different contexts and different locations. So we're going to start what we're calling the Palisades Center segment, go to Valley Cottage, go to around Executive Boulevard, and then finally we'll be up near Lake Road and the very north end of Route 303. So again, we're going to start right down here around the Route 59 interchange. Okay, so what we're looking at here, this is an aerial photo, so it's taken from a plane looking down. Here we're looking at, this is Route 59 going left to right across the screen on the bottom. This is the New York Thruway going left to right across the middle of the screen. Palisades Center Mall, this big building over here. Okay, Route 59 has an interchange with Route 303. And there's three things that we're suggesting at this interchange location. We looked at a lot of options. What we're suggesting here are these three things. Number one, the interchange. Some of the ramps are stop control. They have stop signs on the end of those ramps. There's very limited space to accelerate and decelerate as you're either entering or exiting one of the roadways at this interchange. So number one would be improvements to the length that you have to accelerate and decelerate. Again, a big safety improvement there. Number two, you see the arrow going across here. There is a sidewalk directly on the bridge that takes Route 59 over Route 303, but there's not connecting to it on both sides. So what we propose here is a sidewalk connection that gets you east-west from the east side of this interchange all the way over to west by the Palisades Center Mall. We think that would be a pretty valuable, safe, new pedestrian connection. And then third, what you see in green here, there is a striped median, or what is sometimes referred to as a flush, flat median, flush with the roadway surface. And what we're suggesting, this is on the sustainability side, what we're suggesting is to consider converting that painted median into a raised median with plantings to green that median. Okay, now I want to move along from this interchange to the first traffic light that you would encounter moving north along 303. This is at East Palisades Center Drive, access to the mall. Here we're proposing two things. One would be a crosswalk and then a sidewalk connection across Route 303 and into the mall, a safe way to get from the east side of 303 into the mall. And the second would be a sidewalk along these various commercial properties along the east side of Route 303. So the second proposal here would be to introduce a sidewalk there to accommodate safe pedestrian travel. Okay, next we're going to continue moving further north. We're going to go past the interchange with the New York Thruway. So now we get to Casper Hill Road and then Storms Road a bit further up. So starting at Casper Hill Road is at a skew at a funny angle. It comes down that you are coming down, descending from Casper Hill, approaching Route 303. And the suggestion we've ended up with at this location is to consider restricting left turns, leaving Casper Hill Road to turn north onto Route 303. The traffic counts we did show that the number of vehicles doing this is not high, but it's technically a legal traffic movement, and we're suggesting to eliminate that for safety reasons. And that those vehicles would have to reroute to perhaps Storms Road. Okay, at Storms Road, we're recommending, so there would need to be an engineering study of this. We're recommending further evaluation of whether a traffic signal, a traffic light would make sense at this location. And then up on the top of the slide here at Brookridge Drive, we're getting close to the library. We're recommending it to consider a bus stop. So you have bus service on Route 303, but you do not have a bus stop south of Lake Road and Valley Cottage. You're a bit far away from it here. So we're recommending that you consider a bus stop on the southbound side of Route 303, provide access into the residential neighborhood over here. And if you wanted to go to the library, it's a lot closer to the library than the next stop to the north. Okay, we're going to move along now to the second segment, which we're calling Valley Cottage South. And this is really centered on the 5-point or 6-point intersection of Route 303, Lake Road. You've got Christian Herald coming in, you've got Ridge Road coming in. So that's what we're talking about here. Okay, so this is exactly that location. Right now, you've got a traffic light at Route 303 and Lake Road. You've also got a fire department facility, a firehouse down here. You got the elementary school. This is the secondary intersection, which has stop control on 3 of the approaches. So we have 3 options that I'm going to present in a moment. One of them is a roundabout with 6 legs, bring all six, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these legs into one large roundabout. Second is a 5-leg roundabout, and I'll show how we would accommodate that. And then the third is no roundabout. So like I said, we have options that are not roundabouts. And this would be to improve the traffic light, make some changes to the traffic light, make some changes to the pavement. And I'll walk through what these would involve. First, what we would do is we would restripe the westbound approach of Route 303, and we would get a second left turn lane. So you'd have 2 lanes to turn left to go south onto Route 303 from Lake Road. Second would be what's currently a right turn lane as you come south on Route 303. We would convert that into a right and through lane so that through traffic would have 2 lanes as they approach Lake Road, and they would carry through the intersection as 2 lanes for a short distance. Third is that we would add on Christian Herald Road, where my cursor is, a right turn lane for northbound traffic at Lake Road. So you'd have 1 lane for traffic turning left, 1 lane for traffic turning right. And then here, for safety reasons, at this location, we would change the traffic signal to be protected only left turns from Route 303. So if you wanted to go from Route 303 and turn left, you would only turn left on a green arrow. You would not turn left any other time. Okay, so this is what that looks like. Let me walk quickly through this. So we have separate right turn and left turn lanes on Christian Herald Road. We restripe, not widen here, but restripe to get a second left turn lane going to westbound to southbound. We get a second through lane coming through the intersection. There's no widening here. There's a bit of widening here to get this second lane through. And we would not make changes to the final leg of the intersection. So this is what that would look like if we had just improved the traffic signal. Then our 2 roundabout options at this location. The first is the 6-leg roundabout option. So again, we bring every one of these 6 roadways all together into one fairly large traffic roundabout. We have 2 lanes of Route 303 that carry through northbound, same thing southbound. And we have on the side streets, mainly it's 1 lane approaching on the side streets. And again, this brings everything all together, but because it's bringing everything together, it's larger than what I'm going to flip to now, which is the 5-leg roundabout concept. So much smaller circle, much less of a circle to travel around, because what we've done in this option, you would take Ridge Road and you would bring it into a completely separate intersection with Lake Road somewhere over here. So there's a church here. We're showing it somewhere between the church and the adjacent buildings. Details to be determined exactly where that placement would go. But if it went right here, it wouldn't go through any building. Then you would not have a roadway right here. Therefore, we only need a 5-lane roundabout. It's a sort of cleaner roundabout compared to the one you see with 6 legs. Okay, so those are our 3 options we developed for this location. Now I want to briefly talk about how they would perform. So there's a lot of information here. What I want to highlight is we began at each location looking at what is the level of service, how congested is it today? It's a D. We looked at what would happen if we do nothing, we leave everything as is and just grow traffic out to the year 2050. It would become an E at 60 seconds of delay, or 64 for a typical vehicle. Then the signal improvements option would take that E, bring it back to a D, somewhat comparable to today's level of congestion at this location. And we would get a reduction of approximately 23% in crashes at this intersection. And our 2 roundabout options would bring us to a much better level of service, to a level of service B. So D is good, B is also good, but B is better than D. And that's what I mean when I say that at the locations that we looked at, the roundabouts just provide better traffic flow. This is during the peak hour, the busiest hour of the day, but it would also be true during the less busy hours of the day as well, because you wouldn't stop at a red light. There's no opposing traffic. You would enter the roundabout and proceed. In terms of construction costs, there's been a lot of construction cost inflation in the past several years. Construction costs are fluid, but what I do want to highlight here is that at this planning level, we can say that the signal improvements would be a lower cost improvement at this location. The 2 roundabouts have higher costs, and actually that 5-leg roundabout would have the highest of the costs of the options here. And the reason there is because of the rerouting of Ridge Road to this new location further away from the main intersection. Over at Lake Road and Christian Herald, we have an LOS of F today, which is the worst. It's going to stay F and get even worse in terms of delay, how much waiting you'll do. But if we move that north leg of Ridge Road and we add the right turn lane on Christian Herald Road, we go all the way from an F to an A. So those two improvements, not at the main intersection, but just at Lake Road and Christian Herald Road, have a lot of potency to improve traffic conditions at this location. Okay, I'm going to move along now to our third location, our third segment of Route 303. We're around Executive Boulevard, and then we are moving up all the way past Congers Lake, all the way towards Lake Road and Congers, not to be confused with Lake Road and Valley Cottage that we just looked at. Okay, so we're going to begin here at Executive Boulevard. Here, what we're recommending is a crosswalk across Route 303. So presently, you have a traffic light, but you don't have a safe pedestrian crossing. So what we're proposing is provide that safe pedestrian crossing. And then this second arrow that you see going down on the east side of Route 303 would be another sidewalk connection. And there's a bus stop here. So there's, again, bus service on Route 303. You have a bus stop over here, but you don't have a safe way to walk to that bus stop. So it'd be a sidewalk connection to get you to that bus stop. Okay, continuing further north on Route 303, we're past Executive Boulevard. We're now at Gilcrest Road and Highway Avenue. There's, I believe, a community center over to the west, Congers Lake. Okay, at this location, we are recommending a sidewalk, actually a sidewalk that would run continuously through this section, further north of this intersection, along the east side of Route 303. We're recommending crosswalks across all four legs of this intersection. We're recommending a connection that gets there's a bus stop up here, a bus shelter. So a sidewalk connection to that bus shelter from the intersection. And then a continuation of the sidewalk along Gilcrest Road to the west, connecting to the community center. So right now, you don't have a safe way to walk on this side of the road to the community center. This would provide that along Gilcrest. Further north, past Gilcrest and Highway Avenue, we were a little bit surprised the first time that we got out and visited the corridor. You have a passing zone in this stretch of Route 303. That passing zone would have been implemented many, many decades ago when the land uses were very different. The amount of driveways were very different. The traffic volumes were very different. And so what we're proposing at this point, you'll have to do a detailed engineering study, but what we're proposing at this point is reconsider whether a passing zone is appropriate. Really, it's here, and you're also going to see the same thing further north along Route 303. Okay, so we're moving further north now once again, and now we are at the top of Congers Lake. We are at Lake Road in Congers. And here what we are suggesting is a sidewalk connection to a bus shelter along the west side of Route 303. Crosswalks where there are no crosswalks across all three of these legs of the intersection. And then what you see in green, this dashed arrow here, would be a cycle lane, a way to cycle safely east-west from Congers Lake over towards Route 9W. So our remit was we focused on the 303 corridor, but we identified this as an opportunity for a location to improve east-west connections for cycling as well. Finally, I want to mention up here at this intersection, we looked at various options here that would take left turns away from this intersection, move them up to another intersection with Hemingway Avenue, which is the next street to the north here. We've also looked at the option of putting adding left turn lanes. So at this intersection, there are no left turn lanes north and south along 303. You come to the traffic light, and if you're turning left, you are in the through lane. So the recommendation here is consider both northbound and southbound left turn lanes at this location. Okay, then we are nearly done with 303. We're at the very north end of Route 303. There's a lot going on here. There's even some land use proposals that many of you may have heard of. In this part of Route 303, we have some light industrial uses. So this is the Congers North segment. First item I want to highlight here is we get to an intersection with Hilltop Road and Randy Lane. Hilltop Road to the left, to the west of Route 303, Randy Lane to the right. Here you do have a crosswalk. But what we're recommending is to consider upgrading that crosswalk to what you see here. This is called an RRFB, a rectangular reflective flashing beacon. What that means is, as a pedestrian, you press a button to cross that crosswalk, and immediately, without delay, strobe lights start flashing yellow to tell drivers, not only is there a crosswalk there, but there is someone right now crossing that crosswalk. So that's the type of treatment that we're recommending you consider at Hilltop and Randy, again, to make it safer and more accessible to get across the state highway. As we get further north, once again, we have more passing zones on this stretch of Route 303. We're recommending reconsidering whether those passing zones fit the current land use context. You have condominium development up there, a lot more land use, a lot more development than when the last time this roadway was considered. Okay, now we're up towards the very final stretch of Route 303. We're at Brenner Drive. There's a painted median on both sides of this Brenner Drive intersection. We're recommending, like some other painted median locations, consider a landscape median. It's a beautification initiative. It's a stormwater management initiative, a sustainability initiative. So to consider that there. There would need to be further study, but we're recommending to evaluate the merits of a traffic signal at this location. Currently, there is no traffic light at Brenner Drive. And what you see in white along the east side of Route 303, this would be a recommended sidewalk that would go along the east side of Route 303, connecting this residential neighborhood down here with, there's Hemlock Park just to the north. So a safe way to get up to Hemlock Park, not walking in the shoulder, but walking on a sidewalk. At Brenner Drive, we would also recommend considering crosswalks across the various legs of this intersection. And there is no bus stop immediately in this area, so we'd recommend considering a shelter, considering a stop location to serve. These are some major employment sites to serve those sites. Okay, continuing up towards Hemlock Drive, Meola Road, and ultimately this is Route 9W over here, so the intersection with 9W. I'm at Hemlock Drive, and we're aware there was another fatality earlier in 2026 at Hemlock Drive. We're recommending here sidewalk on the east side, crosswalk, and then sidewalk on the west side down to get from a bus stop to into this employment center. Over at Meola Road, which is the final intersection I'll discuss on Route 303, there's development that's proposed, Cedar Corners, in this sort of area. I know that that's under review by the town at the moment. So our recommendation is consider this as a location for potential traffic light if you're going to provide access to more intense development at that location. Okay, I'm going to pause for a moment, and then I'm going to move along to Route 304 and talk about what we're thinking on 304, going from south to north once again. Okay, so our 4 segments of Route 304, the town line on the south to Bardonia, where we begin with the freeway section, and then we transition at West Nyack Road into the surface roadway. Bardonia to Virginia, which is, in my opinion, one of the more challenging sections of these roadways. We'll go through the New City Hamlet Center, and then finally North New City, all the way up to the connection to 9W. Okay, so we're going to start out all the way at the south once again. So here is 303. What you're seeing right here, these are the ramps that connect down to Route 59. West Nyack Road, again, 3 fatalities at West Nyack Road. At West Nyack Road, we are making major recommendations here because we know that there's a state study coming down the pike. What we are recommending is consider sidewalks along West Nyack Road, consider a crosswalk across West Nyack Road north to south. And we think that the state will be evaluating the merits of protected only left turns north and south. Currently, you can turn left, north and south on Route 303 when you have a green ball. It's a driver judgment decision. Our analysis is that you may ultimately decide that it's safer to convert to protected only left turns, but we're not making that recommendation. That's to come as a piece of future work. Moving further north, so there's a series of car dealerships on Route 304 here. Upper at Demarest Mill Road, we're recommending sidewalks along Demarest Mill Road to connect some of these commercial properties over to Route 304. And there's right turn lanes as you approach this intersection, both in the northbound and the southbound location. They don't get a ton of use. We've counted the traffic out there. So we think that there's merit in rethinking those right turn lanes, putting those right turn lanes into a shared lane with the through traffic. And that allows you to narrow down what's currently a very, very wide roadway to cross if you're a pedestrian, to narrow down that roadway to make it faster and easier to get across on foot. We would do this with what we call curb bulb outs. That means at intersections where we have a pedestrian crossing, bringing the curbs closer together. Traffic lanes can get through, but there's not a wide shoulder at those locations. Okay, moving further north, here we are near Village Green and Dustbin Lane. This is also a challenging location. So here, there's busy traffic. It's a 5-lane section. There's 2 lanes in each direction. There's a center turn lane. There's businesses. There's condominium developments. There's a lot of activity in this area. However, neither at Village Green, nor at Dustbin Lane, nor at anywhere else is there an optimal place to place a traffic light. We didn't find a single location where we could justify combining access into these multiple properties, these multiple streets into a single traffic light. Therefore, a recommendation here, this is a long-term recommendation which would take many years to come to fruition, is to consider, as these individual properties redeveloped, consider some type of a district approach to access so that instead of every single property going directly onto Route 304, there's shared access, and maybe then you have the traffic volumes that can support a traffic light. Okay, now moving along to Bardonia Road and then north of Bardonia Road. So at Bardonia Road, Ludwig Road to the west, here the 2 recommendations are consider either a roundabout, which is what you see drawn over here, or improvements to the traffic signal, the traffic light that is already out there. Now, you see a drawing of the roundabout. I have a bigger drawing in a few moments. You don't see a drawing of improvements to the traffic light because at this location, we would improve the traffic light in various ways without changing the pavement. So we wouldn't be adding lanes or changing any lanes. We would be simply changing how the traffic light works, those mast arms, etc. Okay, so here's what that roundabout at Bardonia that we've drawn up would look like. CVS over in this corner of the intersection, 2 lanes through the intersection, both along 304 northbound and southbound, 1 lane through eastbound and westbound. So if you're going from 304 north to go west on Ludwig Road, you would be in this lane. You would travel through like this. Okay, so that's an example of the trajectories that you would follow as you go through the intersection. Okay, so how would this perform at Bardonia? Today, level of service is a C. Out to 2050, it's going to be a D, which again, D, not so terrible. The signal improvements wouldn't do very much. That's because there wouldn't be very much changes in terms of congestion. So it'd still be a D. The roundabout would make it a C rather than a D. And you can see the average amount of time you're at that intersection waiting to enter would be quite a bit less with the roundabout than with the traffic light. In terms of safety, you get a safety improvement from those various improvements I talked about earlier, the reflective backplates, the yellow flashing arrows, etc. But you get a much larger benefit in terms of safety from a roundabout just because every driver is forced to slow down as they navigate, as they enter that roundabout. And here at this location, the roundabout clocks in as the higher cost of the 2. Okay, moving further north along Route 304. So we've left Bardonia behind. We have our school over here. We actually have Germans Park over here. So the first thing I want to highlight is Germans Park connects out to Germans Road. Route 304 and Germans Park are not far apart. They're physically pretty close on the map, but there is no way to get on foot from Route 304 into Germans Park. So these dashed green lines that you see up here would do exactly that. It would be a trailway. It might be something like a 10 to 12 foot wide trailway, and it would go along. There's actually a power line right of way, a strip of land that is carries electric lines, and that's what would be the host for this this trailway. So that's the first thing that I want to highlight would be a brand new connection for anyone that lives in this neighborhood over to Germans Park without having to loop all the way around to the other side of Germans Park. Next thing I want to highlight in this section, you see in orange, that line running right down through the middle of the roadway. This is where we are recommending that you consider a median. So again, the downside of a median is that property access becomes more difficult. You can only turn right into access properties or right to leave properties. You're not turning left. It's more dangerous to make those lefts, so the median simply prohibits it. And instead, you're going to some sort of a U-turn facility. Either it's a roundabout or it's a traffic signal that can accommodate them. Or in a moment, I'll show you another way that you could accommodate U-turns. But this has the downside of what it means for access. It has a big, big advantage in terms of what it means for safety. Okay, so in this section, there's no turn lanes. You're turning left from the left through lane. We counted a total of 838 crashes through this stretch where we're proposing a median. Out of those crashes, approximately 600 would be addressable, are the types of crashes that a median would address. And approximately 300 is forecasted to be eliminated. So something like 300 crashes avoided of those 800 that we saw. So pretty powerful in terms of safety, and that would be the motivation. So again, you'd want U-turn facilities. The standard is something like a 1/4 mile to a 1/2 mile spacing. Could do it with roundabouts, could do it with traffic lights. Here is another way that you could do this. And if you want to see something that looks like this, have a look in Orangetown near Erie Street. Median was introduced with exactly this sort of a U-turn treatment. It allows passenger cars to turn around. It's sized only for passenger cars. So if you're a truck or anything bigger, you have to find some other way to make a U-turn because otherwise this would be a much bigger circle. But this would be another way to provide for U-turns without introducing roundabouts or without making the traffic signals wide enough to allow U-turns. Okay, so we are now at Germans Road. This is the next major traffic signal along Route 304. We've passed Monterey Gardens. We're now at Germans Road. At Germans Road, we're proposing one of two things. Either it's a roundabout or it's the signal improvements you see in the drawing on the top left. So the roundabout, there's a lot of lanes. It's big. It would take a lot of land. We've adjusted the route. We've shifted around to attempt to minimize impacts to properties, but it's unavoidable. It would take space. The traffic signal improvements, let me jump to that and I'll walk through what we're talking about here. First thing is we analyzed the left turns at this intersection and come up with a recommendation to make all 4 left turns on all approaches protected only. So you only turn left when you have a green arrow, not any other time. This is a trade-off as well, lots of trade-offs. The trade-off here, much better for safety, but it's a bit more delay because you're always waiting for that green arrow. So what we would change on the ground here, a second left turn lane going southbound, coming from New City and turning to go towards the schools, towards the east on Germans. So right now you have 1 left turn lane, there would be 2. Second change would be a second through lane coming down the Germans Hill, approaching the intersection and going through the intersection just far enough to get through the intersection and then emerge back down to a single lane. So this would get 2 lanes through the intersection through here, additional turn lane for southbound traffic, and that would address the additional congestion from making all these left turns safer through protected only. And I want to flag for everyone, we're aware that at this location, there's lots of school bus traffic, there's lots of truck traffic, so we're really aware that there's a lot of special conditions of traffic at this location. Okay, the roundabout that we've drawn up at this location, there's commercial properties on the northeast, southwest. There's Albertus Magnus High School to this southwest, southeast side. Then there's homes, there's residential properties to the northwest. The drawing here respects as best as possible, as best as we could make work with the design standards, those residential properties. You can see the fences at the rear of these properties. So we've stayed on the street side of those fence lines. We've shifted as far as we could towards the areas where it's less intrusive. But you can see just from the drawing, it would take quite a bit of space. It's a bigger footprint than the traffic signal improvements would involve. Okay, in terms of performance, you're at a D today. It would be an E in the future if nothing is done. If the signal improvements are made, you would still be at an E, but you'd be a somewhat better E. And with the roundabout, traffic would flow much better. So the roundabout here would provide much, much better traffic flow, but it's got that trade-off, as you've seen. It's physically a lot more real estate. In terms of reduction in crashes, you do get a big reduction here from the signal improvements because of that conversion to protected only lefts. You're eliminating many, many, many of those angle, very dangerous crashes. So you do get a big reduction from that. You get a slightly bigger reduction from roundabouts, but comparable, I think it's fair to say. And the roundabout here would be more expensive, and the signal improvements would be somewhat less expensive. And the way to think about all of the costs that we're talking about for these improvements, single-digit millions of dollars, something in that range, maybe on the higher end for some, maybe on the lower end for others. If we're just changing the mast arms or just changing the infrastructure without new pavement, we're probably under $1 million. Those are the sort of the range that we're thinking about. Okay, moving further north on Route 304, we are at Leona Avenue, and at Leona Avenue, you have a traffic light currently. But if you wish to turn left from northbound traffic over to go onto Leona Avenue, you have to do that from a shared lane with through traffic traveling. This is a 45-mile-an-hour section of Route 304. So the drawing here would show an additional turn lane, an added turn lane to separate that left-turning traffic out from through traffic. That's what this would do. Or the roundabout alternative, I'll show in a few moments what that would involve. Signal improvement first. You can see we have an additional turn lane, both going south, really just into this one property. This is a dental office. And then we also have going northbound, this new, really the motivation here is get this new left turn lane, pull it out separate from through traffic. And the roundabout option here, once again, you can see it takes up more space. So here we are not interfering with the building. Here we are. So more space needed if we were to have a roundabout at this location at Leona. It would provide the ability, if you were to have that center median, provide the ability for U-turns to allow that center median to be there. Okay, what does this mean? Well, in terms of traffic flow, it's straight A's across the board. In the future with the signal improvements or with the roundabout, straight A's everywhere. So the issues at this location really aren't congestion. The issues are safety. So at this location, you get something like a 55, 56% reduction in crashes from adding those left turn lanes, northbound and southbound, and you get something like a 3/4 reduction in crashes from the roundabout, which again is more space. The roundabout is also more expensive here. The signal improvement is somewhat less expensive. Okay, continuing further on 304, we are at the New City Hamlet Center location. So here, South Main Street splits off, and we have South Main Street separate from Route 304 in its own alignment to the east. Okay, we're at Laurel Road. Currently, southbound left, so as you go southbound on Route 303 and you turn to go east on Laurel Road, currently you can make that turn as a permitted left turn. And we're recommending here to study that, evaluate the merits of converting that to protected only, again, for safety reasons. This is the point of transition from a 45-mile-an-hour speed limit up to a 55-mile-an-hour speed limit. Traffic is moving very fast through this area. And through this entire area north of Laurel Road, speed limit is 55. It's a pretty complex study of speeds and roadway context to recommend a speed limit reduction. Here, we're recommending that be undertaken, that this study be undertaken of reducing that speed limit north of Laurel from the current 55 to either 45 or 45. Final item that I want to mention in this stretch of 304, there's signal at Laurel Road, a traffic light Laurel Road. The next traffic light is further north at 3rd Street, and we're recommending at several locations, the one highlighted here is Eleanor Place, considering adding additional points of access connecting Route 304 to the neighborhood to the west. And one of the reasons for that is it better distributes traffic rather than concentrating traffic at a smaller number of locations. And you may be aware that there's been a zoning change on this area of New City. So if there's more development, then you'll have additional traffic volume, and that would help to distribute that traffic better. Okay, continuing up to the 3rd Street traffic light. So here we're recommending there's shoulders on both sides of Route 304 here. We're recommending just at the intersection to pull the curb lines together. Curb bulb outs is the term. Possibly a refuge, a space in the middle between the northbound and southbound directions of Route 303 that would allow a pedestrian to pause if they needed to pause after crossing half of Route 304 before they cross the rest of it. It's a big wide road to cross. So we're recommending those as pedestrian improvements at 3rd Street. There's been one of the fatalities that we've looked at was a wrong way crash from a driver who turned the wrong way onto 304, and it was a head-on collision. So we're recommending there's several locations where there's right in, right out access points. We're recommending to consider closing some of those access points to eliminate that risk of wrong way driving in this stretch of 304. Last thing I want to highlight here before we move along to Congress Road, what you see in green, right now you have that guide rail median that runs through the center of the roadway. We're recommending that you consider converting that median into a green median. Again, the landscaped, could absorb stormwater rather than the hardscape that it currently is. Okay, now we're at Congress Road, and Congress Road is the final location, the final of our 5 focus areas where we've drawn detailed drawings and we've done a detailed impact analysis. We've got 2 options here. One is to make the traffic signal, the traffic light, work better. The next is to convert it to a roundabout. Okay, so this is what it would look like if we improved the existing traffic light. First, going northbound, right now there's 1 left turn lane to go north from 304 to west onto Congress Road. We would add a second, so there would be 2 left turn lanes where there's currently only 1. We'd also add additional through lanes in the eastbound direction, so we'd have 2 through lanes in the eastbound direction and 2 through lanes in the westbound direction. So we'd make the Congress Road itself right at the intersection wider. And as you see, these would neck down pretty rapidly on both sides of the intersection, back down to 1 lane in each direction. What the roundabout might look like, the roundabout option at Congress Road, 2 lanes through on Route 304 northbound, same thing on southbound, only 1 lane through in the east-west direction. And then I'll talk more about this in a few moments. We're recommending that you consider a trailway, a recreational trailway connection that could be built to the standards of the Empire State Trail, if anyone has been on sections of that across New York State. And that would connect further north from here along 304, and it would terminate right at this intersection, connecting you in to the new city hamlet. How the options at Congress Road would work, we've got a D in terms of traffic congestion out there today. It would become an E through traffic growth if nothing is done out to the year 2050. The signal improvements would bring you back to more or less where you are today in terms of traffic flow, and a roundabout would be quite an improvement in terms of traffic flow. It's a B. You can see the seconds of delay, which is how we measure this, would be quite a bit lower for that roundabout. In terms of safety, the roundabout performs best here. Signal improvements improve safety, but not as much as a roundabout would. And the roundabout would also have a higher cost at this location. Okay, we're moving along now. We're at Cavalry Drive. Next, we'll move along to Squadron Boulevard. So what you see dotted in green here along the west side of Route 304 might look something like this. This pathway, maybe it's 10, 12 feet wide along the west side of Route 304, and it would provide a brand new trailway connection all the way from Congress Road straight up to Route 9W. There's a New York State bikeway along Route 9W, which is very heavily used. So it'd be a new, roughly a 3-mile long connection up to there. At Cavalry Drive, this was not one of the detailed locations that we focused in detail on. Recommendations here, consider either a roundabout, or if we're going to keep the traffic signal, improving pedestrian access by putting crosswalks across Route 303 or 304, and also those curb bulb outs to bring the curbs closer together, make it easier and safer for pedestrians to cross. So this trailway that I mentioned a few moments ago, this trailway would run from all the way from Congress Road, past Cavalry Drive, past Squadron Boulevard, past Phillips Hill, so we'll all the way up to Route 9W. It'd be a 3-mile stretch. 10, 12 feet wide would be the dimensions. It would be physically buffered from traffic. So in this area, we're not talking about a sidewalk. It would be separated from traffic. You would have crossings that might look something like this. And this would be, again, similar to what you see in other parts of the state called the Empire State Trail. Okay, going to move along to our final section where I'm going to wrap up and I'll hand it over to Celeste to cover next steps. And then we're going to reconvene back in the foyer, and we're happy to take on your feedback, questions, answers, etc. Okay, so after Cavalry Drive, we have Squadron Boulevard. At Squadron Boulevard, similar to Cavalry Drive, either a roundabout option, replace the signal, or keep the signal and put crosswalks across all legs of the intersection and curb bulb outs to improve pedestrian access across Route 304. Then we get up to Phillips Hill Cosmos. At Phillips Hill and Cosmos, there was a fatality, one of the ones that we studied. Here, there's several options, none of which are perfect. They all have their trade-offs, but let me walk through them. First would be convert Phillips Hill to a right in, right out. Do not allow lefts into Phillips Hill or out of Phillips Hill. And here, if we were to do that, we would recommend some kind of physical treatment, some kind of a median to ensure compliance with that left turn prohibition. Or if you're going to have left turns, then put a left turn lane and don't have those left turns in that through lane. This is a 55-mile-an-hour speed limit section. Finally, the third option would be simply to close this roadway, close this access point, and redirect traffic. It's a bit of a long rerouting of traffic, but the nearest traffic signal would be over at Goble Road. Finally, at Goble Road, we have the traffic light, but on 304, we have a single lane northbound and southbound. So all turning traffic, turning left or turning right, is in that same lane. If you're turning left, waiting to turn, you're blocking through traffic behind you. So we'd recommend here, consider putting turn lanes, both north and south on 304, separate slow moving turning traffic from higher speed through traffic. And with that, we've covered south to north 303, south to north 304. I'm going to hand back to our colleague Celeste to send us to the foyer.
I definitely feel like Scott deserved that round of applause for that. Good job. All right. Thank you so much. So this concludes the formal presentation for the evening. For our folks that are on Zoom, thank you so much for joining us and sticking with us. I think we had about 15 participants on Zoom, so thank you again. You are welcome to add more comments online at the project webpage, which I know that has been shared in the chat on the Zoom a few times. So thank you. We're going to shut down the Zoom in just a moment. For those of you joining in person, if Scott's awesome presentation has inspired some more thoughts and comments, please feel free. You have two options. Well, actually have three options. One is you either already got one of these worksheets or they are available at the front or from me. You can fill out some comments on this and leave it with us tonight. Anyone basically with a name tag on or at the welcome table. Or you can speak to folks back at the different posters if you'd like to get another look at those. Or again, you can use the QR code or the website that has been shared around to log your comments on the website as well. Okay, and I think that is it. Thank you all so much. Thank you again to the town and county folks who are here, and to everyone who's been part of this. And yeah, that's it. We also know a lot of you have been here for a while, so if you've given your feedback, please go and have a great night. Thank you.